Howdy, howdy, folks. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. And I already see a question in the chat. I'm gonna hit it right up before we even dive into like any of the meat and potatoes here. Rob's asking, do you think chat will be more lively on here or on Twitch? That's a good question. We're watching both, so it's wherever you folks are most comfortable. You know, if you're a YouTuber, I don't know if they still call it YouTubers. That feels like old man words. Hop on YouTube. If you like vibing with Twitch, hop on Twitch. I think personally, I think Twitch is a bit more like wacky and crazy. So, and they got crazy emotes and stuff. So, personal preference. Oh, I see everybody. Hello. Say hello in the chat. I feel y'all. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so listen, I'm not gonna keep talking about the crazy stuff. We got a very special guest. The only thing I will say before we start, if you haven't heard the news, which I think would be very difficult if you haven't heard the news by this point. Interactive and Immersive Championship number 2 is coming at you, happening August 21st and 22nd. It's going to be a super sick event, but today is the last day for competitor applications. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put that link in the chat. You can go learn more about it. It is free to join, to compete. Thousands of dollars in prizes, recognition. I mean, there's literally nothing you could lose by entering. So by all means, go through, fill out the application form. I look forward to seeing your pretty face in the mix. You know what I'm talking about? So with that said, Walker, my friend, how are you doing?
Elburz, how's it going? Doing great, man. Glad to be here.
Ditto. Thank you for joining us. And, you know, we'll dive into everything, but a little bit of background, I think, before we even dive into any of the topics. But Walker is kind of longtime friend and a huge reason why the championship even exists. And I know, you know, we could probably get more love for you in a lot of ways, but, you know, when we think about the championship itself, which is this event where all these people from all around the world are live streaming their TouchDesigner setup and rigs into a server, and that server is doing compositing. Then you got guest judges, you got the main hosts and judges, and then there's all this compositing, and then that gets sent out to Twitch. That's not something you could really like put together on a Skype call or, you know, OBS Ninja. While I love OBS Ninja for a lot of things, it's not really something like you want to like mess OBS Ninja
70,
with.
80 streams, right, coming in.
That would be insane, right? Like it would just, your computer would explode. So, you know, first and foremost for myself and the HQ, bro, thanks for all your support. Like without you, a lot of this stuff wouldn't be possible. And I think it's great to shout out that you're the reason why a lot of this is possible and why it looks so sick last year and why it's going to be even more sick this year. We got a lot of cool stuff planned that we'll talk about in a bit, but I think it may be a great place to start. Walker, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and Azimuth Digital?
Yeah, Walker Keene here. I'm a co-founder of Azimuth Digital. Azimuth Digital is a digital studio. We provide media-rich experiences for entertainment and broadcast, for like live events. That's kind of our main focus and market. I have a business partner who does most of the artwork, and then I myself handle most of the technical side and execution of, you know, all the programming, all that kind of stuff. So he and I work together. We really are like that cliche of art and technology, right? I'm like the technologist, he's the artist. You know, we have to each kind of deal with our own personalities in stereotypical ways, right? You know, so it's been a great partnership, and we started in 2017 after esports was like exploding at the time, you know, and we saw an opportunity. Yeah, I mean, it was really big then, and a lot of investors and a lot of companies were looking to that as being the future. So we started around you know, some esports projects, but we've branched off and done other things. But you know, Azimuth, really, that's kind of what we do and kind of how we kind of formed a little bit.
And I think, you know, we've got so many like sick topics. I'm so excited because, and this might be showing my nerdiness a little bit, but I see a lot of TouchDesigner work out there, and the stuff you're doing is some of the most exciting stuff for me. Thanks, like, man. I still remember the first time you told me, like, yo, we put Touch in a data server and, you know, it has all these benefits. And I'm like, that's the smartest thing I've ever heard. Like, that's the smartest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why is everybody not doing this? And I think before we dive into that, I think one interesting thing to ask, um, and not to like, I don't want to go down the whole like
Sure.
COVID question line because God knows by this point we're all tired of COVID and like the new. If anyone says the new normal to me again, did they just get a smack upside the head? But I think it's really interesting that to me it feels like you guys were doing esports stuff beforehand, but of all the people I know, it feels like you really turned the COVID lemon into lemonade.
Yeah,
And was that something intentional? Did it happen kind of just you went with the flow? How did
it
that kind
was
of work out for
intentional,
you
but
guys?
like all things in business, it's a little bit of luck too, you know.
Mm.
But to your point, we're primarily a live events company. Here a little bit about Azimuth.
Oh yeah, do you
Like,
want, do you want me to switch over to screen share?
okay, yeah, if you would.
Yeah, yeah, let's do it.
So like what we're known for is large LED playout for events, like big screens, um,
That's a
primarily.
big event right there.
Yeah, here if I can let me get my thing to continue. Yeah, custom screens, content for esports events. So I mean, if you notice one
Mm.
recurring theme here in a lot of these shots, they all have people, audience, right? And so when COVID came, I mean, it killed all audience. So it killed practically, I mean, basically killed our business and a lot of other people's too, right? And
Mm.
the thing that we had going for us is, esports continued because it's a sporting, but you can play the games. Don't have to be in person on a LAN. They can be online. These games are inherently built for online, use. So we were able to, the show must go on, right? And the companies and our clients felt that way, and I come from Broadway shows too. I absolutely felt that way, and so we started having discussions about how that could happen. What did that look like with everybody playing at home instead of in a live event like that? And
Mm.
so we worked hard. To your point, the first thing to hit is the data center. I was like, trying to figure out doing stuff on AWS, but there's no big GPUs. I need I need a machine with two, you know, P6000s or whatever, and so
Mm-hmm.
we just can't get that kind of stuff, and so we just built our own. um, I started, I was in LA at the time, and so I started calling data centers, and just like, I didn't know about data center. What do I barely graduated high school. What do I know about data centers? So I just started looking into it, started putting together a system, and in about a month we had a smoking system that was producing events.
That's crazy. So I think we're going to come back and dive into this, but I think your past is also super interesting. And maybe that's like a great place to start because I always ask this question to like all the guests that we have on, which is, um, where did you come from before TouchDesigner? Because I think maybe now, and this is going to be like more old man talk, but in my day you couldn't go to school and like come out as a person in our like there was no like programs. Right
No,
now
right.
there's like ITP, all these other schools you can go to learn processing, a little bit of TouchDesigner, a bunch of things, and come out in our industry in some sense. But from where you were coming from, like that wasn't a thing. So where did you come from, and how did you kind of end up in our
Oh
space in
man.
the TouchDesigner world?
Yeah, it's I think I have a little bit of an interesting story. I've been kind of fortunate to work with some great people over time, but I started my career. I was a guitar player. Okay, growing up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was in death metal bands like Morbid Angel, like, this is what I
Yeah.
lived and breathed, right? And I knew I was gonna be broke, but I was gonna be a metal guitar player, and I was gonna tour the country and have a great life, right? Um, and so because I wanted to be a guitar player, I was lucky and got a job at a music store because I wanted to surround myself with what I wanted to do and whatnot. But fortunately, I felt it was unfortunate, but fortunately for me at the time, there wasn't any openings in guitar sales. It was to the service department. So I got
Mm.
back there with the cranky guy who fixed guitar amps and guitars. And so I picked up that trade working with him. I worked there for 4 years when I was started when I was 16 till I was about 18, fixing guitar amps and whatnot, learning electronics, and getting manufacturer trained, right? Going to Fender school and these types of things when I was really young. And then I had a
Mm.
falling out with that business owner, and that job was no longer viable. And in Albuquerque, New Mexico, there's not a lot of work like that. So I went to
Yeah.
everybody was going to the West Coast, And me being the rebel, I'm like, I'm gonna go east. So I went to Dallas. And here's why. This is where the story. This is what kind of gets relevant and some luck. Was I was an amp repair tech. I fixed amplifiers, big crown amplifiers, guitar amplifiers, and I worked for a place there called Audio Electronics in Dallas when I was 19 years old. And one day I had a big crown amplifier come on my bench, and I set it down, and it had this name on it called Shoko. And I thought, Shoko, that sounds familiar, man. I'm like, where do I know that name? And I repaired the amp, and then I kind of stuck in my head, and I knew it was something important. I couldn't remember, so I go and I looked it up again, and it dawned on me. Shoko, I can tell a little bit of it. I will tell a little bit of its story just because people may not know, but Shoko at the time was the largest touring audio outfit on the entire planet. So if you go to Pro Sound News and you look at anything from 1970s to 2005, Shoko probably had 9 of the 10 top grossing tours. So they provided audio and show support for it. And I'm going to tell this a little bit how Shoko started, and then I'll kind of get back into my thing. Shoko's an important part of I think, Americana, and the fact is that Shoko actually invented and started the concert touring business. Okay. So
That's crazy.
literally started this in 1966, and I'll just tell that I'm not a good steward of the story, so please bear with me, anybody who knows it better than I. But Jack Maximum, Rusty Boucher had a garage outfit that back then you couldn't buy PA for like events, right? You had to make your own. And they were hi-fi guys, and they made a PA for live events. You might see some old videos back in the day, like 60s Aussie, or people singing into 3 or 4 microphones at a time. It's because they had 3 or 4 PAs, right? They didn't have one PA. They had 3 or 4 PAs that they had to sing into, right? Beatles didn't have a PA. They just turned their Vox amplifiers up to the crowd at MSG, So these guys built a PA. This is the late 60s. Zeppelin goes on its first major U.S. tour. Back then, you didn't have a tour with, the bands just went city to city, used the audio and stuff that was there. They came to Dallas. They they performed, had the Dallas event. Afterwards, they went straight to Boucher and Maxim and said, hey, this PA sounds great. We want to take it with us everywhere. And those guys saw the business opportunity, and they formed Shoko, and they made, they put together the tour bus. They, invented the roadie and how all that works, and all these things. Right. And this continued. I have an old picture here of just some of the stuff, that they did back in the 70s. And they were primarily did sound and lights and the whole package. Right. That was back in the 70s and in the 80s. So fast forward to Walker. Okay. He gets this amplifier on his desk, having known that Shoko is this multi-million-dollar company that's done all these great things with all these every major artist that's lived, basically, right? And as a fan of music, I'm very excited of this. But I'm like, why don't they have their own guys? Why they send the amp here, right? They should, like, they're a big company. Why don't they have their own amp guys? And I realized that Shoko was in Dallas, and just so happened to be in Dallas. And so literally that night when I saw that amplifier come across my desk, I got on the internet. This is 1999. Okay. So the internet wasn't great. I got on the internet and I found a way to reach out to them. And I sent them an email, like, from my heart, like, I want to work with you guys. I have all of this experience. I'm 19 years old, poured it in there. Next morning, I got a call. Their amplifier tech had quit, and they had all these tours to get out the door, and they needed somebody right away. So I went down there and got the job, and the rest is kind of history. I worked. So from in the early 2000s or late 90s, 99 to about 2003 or 2001, as I think when Shoko sold, I did tours. So I went out, I worked with everybody from Britney Spears and Kiss and NSYNC and Luther Vandross. And I mean, just anybody that was there at the time. And kind of what I did was, in the day, okay, we had analog consoles, no digital consoles, right? You have 40 channels of analog with knobs. If that console goes down, or if there's a problem with that audio console, you can't just swap it out, right? In comes Walker, jumps on a plane and flies out. So your tour loads in the morning, you have a detrimental issue with your console or a showstopper, Walker gets on a plane in the next hour and flies out to your event. And so that's kind of what I did, is I would support these tours, and I would fly out to these events under the gun, dude. I get there knowing the show's not going to happen because the audio consoles are down or whatever's down. And I have that day to fix it because there's a show that night.
That sounds like I know our industry is stressful, but that seems to take it up to a new level. You
Dude,
know,
it
like
was, you know what? That wasn't the most stressful part of it. You know what the most stressful part was? Is when the artist, after I fixed it, when the artist took the stage and opened for the first time and played, the anticipation of that would drive me bananas.
oh yeah,
Because did my work
you're losing
work?
your
Did
mind.
my fixes fix? Is it going to fail? And so that's kind of how I started. And then Shoko ended up the reason Shoko is important and is they invented a lot of things, right? For that we take for granted and that we like I didn't even really know about. So
Mm-hmm.
so Shoko invented Very Light. So I'll come to this. So back in 1982, you had a Van Halen tour, and you remember you had like 600 par cans pointed this way and 600 red par cans pointed that way and 1,000 white par cans pointed down. And Jim Bornhorst and some other people there at Shoko, very, very smart guys, they were like, it sucks setting all these up. These guys had electrical engineering degrees and they're roadies, right? So you have these
Yeah.
like extremely big brain, smart people out there on the road, like figuring out how to make this stuff work, right? And they invented the moving yoke, the automated moving light, and they invented the VL1 in 1982. Um, they put diachroic filters, so you didn't have to have gels anymore to change the colors, and you could pan and tilt and focus this and recall it. And the things that made that happen was HID lighting. So high energy discharge arc lamps came out small enough at that time that they could make a VL1 brighter than a par can and have all of this stuff in there. They went to Genesis, the band Genesis, and Phil Collins at the time, and they made an investment in 1982 into Shoko's Very Light. And what ended up happening was the child outgrew the parent, right? Very Light outgrew Shoko, right? And so
Mm.
then Shoko became the child, even though they were kind of the founding company. Very Light turned into a $300 million worldwide touring company. And so what kind of happened to me was, this is like my Very Light photo. Sorry. Um, so there was two big audio companies. Shoko got sold because Very Light was struggling, so they sold the company off. Um, my bosses at Shoko were executives, so they rolled into Very Light. They just went up to the parent company and
Mm.
they asked me to come along. Um, I didn't know anything about lighting, so I put on my Nikes and I just did it. And I went over to the company and started doing lighting, but from an R&D perspective. So I started working on
Oh,
the
interesting.
technical side of moving lights. So the robotics and the
Mm-hmm.
control surfaces, so the consoles that control moving lights for programming is kind of where I spent most of my time, training people, um, working with R&D very, very closely on a lot of projects there. And eventually, about 2004, 2005, I started Broadway. Okay, so after 2011 or 2001, when we had the terrorist attacks, right? We
Mm.
had George Bush um, had worked with mayor at the time, Giuliani, and they dumped money into Broadway. Okay, and I know a lot of the Toronto guys too because those shows go into Toronto,
Mm-hmm.
or they come from Toronto into New York. But they put a lot of money to rebuild the city, right? To like get tourism back and to do all these things. And so big part of that was Broadway shows and the revitalization of those. And there was a lot of technicians hired to produce all of these shows. And so what long story short, is I was training. And so I went through a few years of Very Light as like their head technical trainer and flew around the world, literally training production companies. And so I got to work. The reason I put Wicked up here was I actually got to work on that show and train that crew, I believe in 2001 at the Geary in San
Mm.
Francisco before the show was ever even popular. They wanted to do a preview. I go out there and they tell me, "Oh, it's a prequel to Wizard of Oz." I was like, "Oh, it sounds great. Sounds like an interesting, thing." And
It
we
could
had,
be good. Could work out.
yeah, and it had 12 moving lights. It's all it had at the time. And so we went out there, we trained the guys, we got everything going. A show was just like, I thought the show was, I'm not even a Broadway guy. I'm a metalhead, man.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Of course, it got picked up, moved to New York, moved to the Gershwin Theater in New York. It's a great theater. And so I got to go up there and work with those crews, all the local one guys, got to train all the Wicked crew, got to work with them for a couple of years as the show got off. Now, again, when I was on it, it was 12 moving lights. I think there's 100 now, right? It's a much, much different event. But that's kind of my history is I started off working in these live productions on a technical level,
Mm-hmm.
working component level, right? Working with the electronics and stuff of all these different events for these companies. This last one here I wanted to show. This is Showco PA. So see this big PA, these big speakers out on the left and right. It was a custom design system that they used. They had digital audio back in 1989, right?
Wow.
So 1989 they broke out the equalizers and all of that stuff digitally. So it was a real forward thinking kind of company. And yeah, very very glad to work with. And so sorry, I'm kind of rambling a bit, but what I'm kind of proud of what we got to do is I got to work with these guys, Jim Bornhorst and John Covington. These guys literally invented the moving light. They literally Jim
Mm-hmm.
Bornhorst in the 1977 78 invented the live soundboard. Literally invented the console that we know today because of challenges that with studio boards you can't bring them on site because you end up with summation. And he created a thing called VCAs that I think now are DCAs that they're digital, but and literally invented these things. And these guys are idolized, in NAM and a lot of other organizations. And to be able to have worked with those guys directly and closely for years that I did, I'm kind of proud of that. It's definitely a
It
highlight of my
sounds
career.
amazing.
Yeah, it was great. Great guys
Yeah,
too, by the way. Great guys.
that's crazy. So, and I think there's so many parts of the story that I just love. A few parts like I would draw attention to are, I think one, and this is something we talk about a lot, is it sounds like you really had a great attitude the whole time, right?
Oh yeah.
Where you weren't hell bent on like I must do this one thing, and if it's not this thing, I'm not doing it. You were kind of always going with the flow. These opportunities kind of, big or small appeared, and you're just like, you know what, I'm going for it.
They present themselves, and I think you got to take advantage of an opportunity, right? And they kind of
Mm-hmm.
presented themselves over the years. When I was younger, being a metalhead, gonna play Morbid Angel, I look back as I'm sitting there on stage with NSYNC, in the early 2000s, and we're like, had a little bit of that every now and then. But I still loved what I did.
Yeah. I have to ask, just personally,
Sure.
what kind of guitar did you which camp are you in?
Well, I played
Are
BC
you a Les
Rich.
Paul kind of
I
guy?
played old
Oh, you
BC
played BC
Riches.
Rich.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah. I had about
Before Kerry King or after Kerry King
before
made it
Kerry
cool?
King. Yeah,
Before Kerry King made it cool. That's gangster.
yeah, man. I played old 80. Yeah, old BC. I have about 20 of them, man. I love those
That's
guitars.
crazy.
Yeah, I love those guitars. One of my passions.
Um, so we're talking about this story, and we're gonna connect to some other stuff. And folks in the chat, I do see all your questions. We are gonna get to as many of them as possible, so keep throwing them in there. Rob, those two questions will come back in a sec because they're a bit more technical. So I think we'll talk about Azure and Omniverse and stuff a little bit later. I do have Aristotle saying, great story. Gotta love how everyone in this industry has a different background. Perhaps that's why the community is so great. I agree. I think it kind of,
Yeah.
I think it makes people a bit more open and less judgmental about like other folks, because you're like, oh well, I have no idea what they probably know all kinds of stuff that I don't know, so I'm not gonna like go in and like dig too much of a deep of a hole for myself.
Sure.
JP's got a good question. Do you have any short nightmare stories? Did you ever arrive at that gig after the 1 hour flight and it couldn't
No,
get fixed?
so the one thing that I can pride myself on and is we never like Shoko hadn't messed up a gig, hadn't blown a gig in like 20 years by the time I got
That's
there.
crazy.
And when I got,
Yeah.
we just didn't do it. We did whatever it took, like literally whatever it took. If they had to charter a plane to put a piece of gear on to fly it to get it there in time, that's what they would do, right? So it was like the show must go on at all costs. And so fortunately, I never blew it. But I can say once
Amazing.
digital consoles started getting into the market, that created a whole new level of issues. And yeah.
Now, before we keep going here, actually, do 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 do, like one of those news. I got a news break in my ear. So actually, what we are going. So I mentioned earlier, today was the last day to apply for championship. Technically, for the people that are watching this stream, we're going to extend it till Sunday. But don't tell anybody. But now you got a couple extra days to apply. I'm going to throw that link in the chat for you. Let me tell you, I mentioned at the beginning, it literally costs nothing to apply. There's thousands of dollars in prizes that you could win. It's kind of a no-brainer. All you got to do is basically send us a picture and a short little video saying why you want to compete. I'm putting that link in the chat for you. Take advantage of that. Listen, I know I'm the one putting it on, so it's like people are gonna be like, well, he's biased. This their event, so they're gonna say it's great. If I was like starting my career, this would be like this would be the most exciting thing for me ever, because it's like, okay, a chance for me to like show tons of people my work, chance to win tons of licenses that I'm probably having trouble like affording myself anyways. There's nothing to lose here. And if anyone saw last year's competition, if you are even a little bit hesitant about your skill, apply anyways. We don't go on stream and start like throwing shade at anybody. Our whole goal is to make everyone look as great as possible, really put everyone in the best light we can, and always just uplift the community and make everybody feel good. So with that said, we are extending for you special viewers watching. Put your application in. It is getting extended until, let me see what's the official. This is a news break. This is how you know it's a real news break, because I got to scroll through the message log. Sunday night. That's what it is. Okay, I found it. Sunday night. So up until Sunday night at midnight, 11:59 p.m. You know how it is. That's all I'm going to say about that. So, and actually, I think it didn't. Did it send not send on Twitch here? I'm going to send on Twitch. Okay, so Walker, getting back to you, my friend.
Yeah, man.
So it sounds like you had this really interesting kind of approach into the industry. A little bit of music, a little bit of lighting. What I also liked about it, I think that really connects with the touch designer mindset and kind of like our industry, is that idea of, I've got a problem, let me see how I can solve it kind of attitude. Not so much, it doesn't feel rigid, it feels very kind of like free flowing. And that reminds me a lot about TouchDesigner, right? Like, so was that one of the things that drew you to TouchDesigner originally, or were there other tools that maybe you had used before TouchDesigner?
Yeah, so playback is what got me into TouchDesigner. So 2012, I think, is when I started dabbling with it. After I got done with my audio and lighting careers, I, for some reason, decided to be a production manager, and needed ways to play out. I was doing like big screens, and that was kind of my vision. And so, and what I like to design, I was doing like production design work, and I wanted to do big widescreen video, and that was difficult to do back in 2012. And so you needed very expensive tools. People call it Resolume. I call it Resolume. Resolution and volume makes sense to me. Everybody calls it Resolume.
Oh, hey, that does make sense.
Everybody calls it Resolume. Even the developers call it Resolume now. But I was actually worked with them back in 2012, and we called it Resolume. So I don't know when it changed, but
I kind of like that better.
To me, it makes more sense, right? But hey, I just wanted to bring that up while we were on here. But
yeah, I kind of like that.
I was using Resolume and other things to try to achieve multi-screen destination playout. And a guy named Brian Alexander turned me on to TouchDesigner and was like, you got to check this out. And, I was scared of it because I didn't want to build. I didn't want to build stuff. Okay. I wanted something to off the shelf that I could use to do it. But then this is where my history kind of comes back, because I look back to the old days of Shoko. There wasn't PAs. We built our PA. We didn't go to QSC, right? We literally had a wood shop that built a PA. They worked with JBL in the 70s on speaker design. They worked with Crown amplifiers for 20 years on amplifier design for live events. And so I'm like, you know what? I have some of that Shoko lineage in me. I know how to build things. I built things for years. this is my tool, and I really embraced it because it allowed me to do things that you couldn't do. You can't do this.
Yeah.
You want to have a show that has that stuff? You can't do that. And then that allows, and then I'm able to do things that others can't, right? And that puts me in a league of my own. And now those clients that want to have 7 screens when D3 only supports 3, I'm like, yeah, I can do that for you, and I'll do it for the same price as D3 because my system isn't $100,000, you know. And I was
Yeah.
really able to get in there and just, and that was like play out, play out, play out. That's what I wanted, you know.
And you were mentioning you had some photos of some building projection that we can look at.
Yes, I'm gonna go through a target
And
project.
a few cool
Yeah.
projects. Yeah. Okay.
So
Well, let me bring up your screen.
I'll set this this kind of up as
Oh, that's a lot of projectors already.
yeah, man.
Right?
15 40Ks, right? 15 40K projectors.
Oh
man.
boy.
Yeah, we had to build these stands. You see those rocker stands that kind of
Yeah.
we had to build those so that way we could get
I love that Shoko, vibe that now that's like sick. I like that.
I'm like, yeah, we can do it. And you know what, man? We have friends too, right? You're my friend. I have other friends I've worked with. I'm not hesitant to call them. I don't know how to do it. I don't have an ego. It's like, hey, dude, can you help me figure out how to do this, right? So we had Target had dumped NASCAR and they were moving on to Major League Soccer and they wanted to have a explosive, interactive experience. So check it out. Here's what we did. we did a building projection, and this is in downtown Chicago on the Tribune building. So we spent a few days getting things set up. I'll run through a couple of shots here, and then I'll kind of talk about kind of what it was. So we had the building. Okay, here's a good shot for me to talk about it. So we had the building in the background there, and you can see we have all of our projection on there, and down on the ground here we have another LED screen. And this is an activation, okay? And this was with Major League Soccer. And the idea here is that you can see on the bottom screen there's targets on that lower LED screen where it says shot missed. Those targets animated around and moved around on the screen, and people like you and I could come up and kick the soccer ball and try to hit the target. And if you notice in this shot, you see how there's a soccer ball on the building. The concept and what happened was when you kick the soccer ball, you tried to hit one of the targets. The animation of the soccer ball continued up into the building, right? And it would show you if you hit the target or not. And the building would animate. And so I tried to find a good picture of it. I have a video I'll show you. But if you missed your target on the LED screen, the building would actually duck out of the way, right? When the soccer ball would come,
the
building
awesome.
would duck, right? It had I think we had 7 different animations. Like you can see it kind of ducking here where the ball's coming in and whatnot. So that was kind of the idea of the activation. There's kind of the ground there where we were doing some of the stuff. We have a video here in a second. I think stand by with me. I think this is the video.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Some of the animations. This one's probably. I think I have a better one after this.
Man, those 40Ks even during daylight, like wow, you still get.
Yeah, you still got, dude. I was so worried, dude. So many calculations and went in. I did all the projection design for everything to try to get. Somebody else did all the. I can't take any of the credit for the animations, but all the technical stuff we did. I'm gonna see if I can find the soccer ball moving. All right, we got one more.
That's really well mapped.
We got one more. It was 18 or 15 projectors. That here I think is a better. Sorry.
Here we go. Will they get it? Will they get it?
Here.
Bets in the chat. One if you think they're gonna hit it. 2 if you think they're gonna miss it. I think miss. I'm going for a miss.
Let's see here. Come on, dude. You can do it. I'm trying to remember. We're gonna fast forward. Come on. Where's he at? Is it here at the end? Oh, hold on. Oh, there we go. Okay. So he kicked the ball. He missed it.
Oh, missed.
The soccer ball.
All the ones in the chat. We got it. We got it. Time to go to Vegas. We're on fire.
Right. We are in Vegas, baby.
Yeah.
So this was a cool project. We did this with Freeman when I was there. I was ran their video department for a few years, like their SWAT kind of department. Their special.
And I think
events.
that's when we first met.
It is.
You were at Freeman.
Yeah, I was like I had a few guys working for me, Eric Peters and other guys, and any educational thing that we had a budget for it, and any educational touch designer or media thing, we were like on it because we were ready to, and I'm
Mm.
taking all the guys with me that I could, because it's important to get
I remember, yeah,
exposed.
the three of you guys came out to the
Yeah,
workshop. It was awesome.
I'll even come to like the beginner workshops. I think it kind of irks Isabel and Greg a little bit, but I come to the beginner ones. Hey, it's there to about network and connect and just be part of the community too, right? So to me, that's
Yeah,
a big part of it.
that's great. Now, did you have another project that you want to talk about now, or did you want to dive straight into virtual production?
I have a few projects that I could kind of run through that I think are kind of like esports related, and also kind of
Yeah.
kind of show the other side of not just big LED play out, like making a media server out of TouchDesigner, which I think a lot of people do in my industry. But this is like kind of a different side of the broadcast. So yeah, I was going to run through a couple projects real quick and kind of show you guys.
And just for folks, cause I guess we didn't. I mean, we only said very lightly in the announcements, like we'll be talking about virtual production and streaming. Don't worry, folks, we're gonna get there. And Walker has like some of the craziest virtual production stuff that I've seen, and I think it really has that Showco like heart in it. So we're gonna get there very shortly. But I always think it's super awesome just to see where everyone's kind of come from, what their process was. Because they're, especially like, our industry is pretty small. It's not like other industries where we can go read a magazine and, find somebody's story and relate to it and be inspired by it and then kind of find ways to mimic it. Like, not to say this is the only format in place, but, like these are the areas where this is where we have those. There's not that many magazines for creative technologists or interactive, immersive folks. So finding ways to share everyone's story, I think, is super cool and very useful for a lot of people.
I agree. It kind of gives background. I think a lot of people think they can't do it, or they get discouraged that they don't have the knowledge. I'll just say right now, I don't have any college or anything.
Oh my God,
you have to teach yourself to learn again. That's how I had to do it. I had to learn the new way, learn through YouTube, right? You have to learn again. And once you that's a grind. I have no other way to say it, right? It's a grind to, but yeah, you don't have to have any special expertise.
100%. And I will definitely go on record and saying like I'm not good at computer programming. I'm not good at math. Like I have like I should, next to the grind, they should just put my face in the dictionary, because that's all I've ever been good at, is just like literally sit still for long periods of time, and you could make a career out of that. Yeah, you can make a career just out of sitting still. But I digress. So let's pull up these other projects.
Yeah, so we're gonna run through the whole production pipeline that I'll show from Blender to Notch to TouchDesigner. But real quick, I want to run through a couple of projects. These are broadcast projects that we used a few years ago. This one here is I call it the map application. It's an esports application that we built to feature maps that are used in a particular game. And so commentators, let me get this over on the right screen. There we go. So commentators, as they're on stage, casters and stuff, they need like assets to work. Hey, we're going to talk about the game. We want it. So we had a project we were commissioned to build that was like imagine like a weather station, where somebody's delivering the weather, but instead they're delivering strategies for teams in esports. So it's like they're standing next to a big touch screen that has this. They have an interface that they can interact with, but then there's a clean output. And what I mean by clean output is it doesn't have any of the interface buttons on it. It's just for the broadcast camera. But so this is kind of what we came up with, and I'll just run through it real quick. This is kind of like the splash screen of where they can kind of choose what's going on. But my business partner.
Oh, yo, this is sick.
Yeah, man. My business partner did all of the assets, and then we creatively used TouchDesigner to select and manipulate those assets to tell the story. So on a typical map, for a video game, you're going to have, different objectives, right? Camps and different cores and different things. So if somebody's going to talk about strategy on a particular core, I can click this information and we'll go in and they can actually zoom in on that feature of the map. And then they can talk about that feature. And this is random. They can go to any position on the map, and any map, go anywhere. We can go to the red core, and the camera will pick up and cut back and go to the red core. In broadcast, we are talking about these things. There's a few things that people really forget. If you notice, this thing lands and now it's just looping infinitely. You don't know how long the guy's
Mhm.
going to talk about the core. He could talk about it for 5 minutes. You just don't know, but you still want the landing, of everything
Yeah.
to happen. So we do a thing called land and loop. Okay. So we have two
Oh, that's
videos
really smart.
or one video. This is my business partner, Ingenious. So in this particular case, it's one video. Sometimes we use two videos, but here we'll go to lanes because I like lanes. This shows where people battle. So what happens is in the same video we have that landing where the lanes animation comes in, and then we draw those lines where it comes in, and that takes I don't remember exactly, but let's say it takes 3 seconds. Okay, and then we play that video out that first 3 seconds, and then you continue to do the rest. But then what we do is we only loop.
Yeah, from after 3 seconds to the
Exactly.
end. That's smart.
Exactly. So as I come in here, we have our little thing here, and this is where I do it. Is we have the landing. I don't know if I can. I don't know how to play it from here, but I'll try. Okay, I can.
Which,
So
by the way, is just two things I'll just insert here. One, this is a common thing. When your system gets like close to finishing, it is not easy to go in there and just like wiggle stuff to make it do things anymore, because there's usually like a giant state machine controlling everything. So I think that's like I sympathize with that. That's real business right there.
yeah,
Second thing I'll say is for folks who haven't been keeping up with esports, the production quality has exploded. I would say, would you agree that most esports have better broadcasts than traditional sports at this point?
yeah, a lot of them do. Yeah, especially like the branded games, right? That have promotion. Absolutely, absolutely. It's
Because
been good for been great for us.
I've watched like NBA stuff and I've watched esports stuff, and I don't know if it's the mix, just because maybe some of the folks getting into the esports stuff are younger and more like technically oriented, but the broadcast desks look slicker. There's more cool LEDs around. There's more, the app. I mean, like, bro, CNN has been around forever, and you watch them during election coverage, and like the little touchscreen thing they use looks so janky and like slow and laggy. They
Right,
got nothing like this, right? And it's
right.
like that's CNN. So it's not during an election. It's like the biggest time of the ever for them. So I think it's, if folks haven't been watching esports, even just go online, just watch some highlights and stuff. There's a lot of really cool stuff. Yeah, and AR is becoming a big one now,
It
in the
is. So
esports side of
yeah,
things.
we can even talk a little bit about that, and we have
Mm,
some uses of that. I can't show them, but we have some,
yeah.
unfortunately, but we do. We have some uses of that. They last thing here, I'll show real quick, is I stole this from the palette so these guys could write, right? So they
Oh
could
yeah,
like,
that's awesome.
and then you have to have a way to undo because they make mistakes. Like literally, you don't want to embarrass. Like you want to make a tool. Like my goal here is I have to think about it from the user perspective, and as a broadcaster who's under pressure and things, you have to make things intuitive, very easy to use without instruction. And that's kind of
Mm.
what we did here. Um, I don't know if anybody even cares, but how we're doing the camera animations is we have, back in the, yeah, I say back in the day, this was 2018. We could ask our clients, developers, hey, can we have at the time, NVIDIA could only handle 16K textures, right? This is
Yeah.
because this project's a couple years old. So I asked them for 16K textures of the map. So that way we could get them, and boom, they produced them. And so then we just put them on a camera, on a plane. And then I used a camera drop system, so it's just a camera on a plane lifting up, and we record those
Oh, that's
values and we
smart.
play them back, right? With
Yeah.
literally with just one filter. I'm not trying to interpolate too much, but that's basically all the system is. And then we just go in and program all the all the maps that are available
Mm.
down at the bottom. So I think that was a kind of wanted to show that project. It's different,
That's a
you know.
cool one.
Yeah, it kind of let's see what else I got here. Oh, okay. This one is an on-site. This is at 7-Eleven headquarters in Dallas. They have
Ooh,
a big
I love me some
LED,
Seven.
or a big video wall rather. It's not LED. When you walk in the facility, and so here, this is like size way too big. So let me get this down to regular size. Okay, here's the project. So this is on a big, wide video wall. I'm trying to, and
Hmm.
and the whole concept here is 7-Eleven is in 10,000. They have 10,000 stores or something, and they're all over the world. And so we built this animation that literally queries a database that they have that tells us the location of their stores, where they're at and like how many they have. And so when they have people come in from like Norway, they want to feature Norway, right? Or if they have
Mm,
people coming from a specific area, they want to feature those people. And when not, and if not, it's just like looping. But you can see where I bring in a map over here in this animation. It says the stores and how long they've been there. We use the Google API. We go out and get those coordinates and bring that texture in here. So it's like a real time,
mm,
interact. I don't want to call it interactive, but it's real time. And we build a lot of stuff. We build is in layers, and I'm kind of trying to show that here. We rendered out individual Singapore. All these countries are all rendered out, and then we can dynamically select those and insert the country in the media stack, if that
yeah.
makes sense,
So you don't
right?
have to generate everything,
No,
but you got some elements that are kind of MoGraphed, and the MoGraph looks really great, by the way.
thanks,
This
man.
is such clean MoGraph. That I think that's a smart way to do it. And I think that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with when they're, I think, reaching that intermediate stage of their development, which is always the choice, like, what do I do real time? What do I bake? And I think for a lot of folks, like, there's exciting elements of let me do all of it in real time. But as you kind of get more into like bigger projects, timelines, budgets, like all the reality of life
Elements.
shifts a bunch of stuff, between both sides. And I think it's always a good thing because I think truly the best stuff is the mix. When you can mix stuff really in a clever way and really combine the strengths of what pre-rendered content can give you and what real-time generative can give you, I feel like that's always the sweet spot for me.
Yeah, like a typical esports event where we have a we'll have 5 or 6 LED screens, right? Like, let me just something like this. We'll have, oh, sorry, give me 1 second. Something like this, we have a bunch of targets, right? We have the main screen up
Mm,
top. We have the screens in the back. We have this side screen. We have these downstage screens for the teams. We have upstage screens behind them, right? So we got 10 or 12 screens at a time, that we have to all put targets and all deal with. And so yeah, it can be challenging to get all that out there. Okay.
yeah, it's a lot of routing and a lot of kind of, because especially like those kind of screens, it's not like you have 8 or 10, 16:9 screens.
No, they're all different. Oh,
Everything's
and so
crazy. Everything's weird aspect ratios.
yeah. Sorry, I lost it for a second. It's still early here. I'll pause this. But see, we have 2 teams here, and so the possibility if we have 20 teams in the league, and we have a versus logo like this, like 20 times 20, right? Because either
Mm,
like here we have the red team can be on the right or the left side. The same with the yellow team
yeah,
can be on the right or the left side. And you don't know who's playing until the match finishes. So you have to be able to have dynamic content. My point is that a set like this will easily have
yeah,
400 rendered videos, 450 rendered videos. And then we
yeah.
dynamically select those and put those in media stacks and play them out in real time. Um, so yeah, it's a lot. I guess that's to your point, the rendered media and not, it kind of explains a little bit of it.
It reminds me of this project we worked on a little while ago, which had something similar. It was basically like you get assigned like an avatar in this experience, and it's got all these stylizations, and there's at the end there's a bunch of different animals that you get assigned to. And despite our best efforts to make it real time, because to your point, like 6 times 6 times 6 times 6 times 6 times really quickly equals a lot of rendered stuff. And I remember that was like a huge thing, but the problem was the systems weren't strong enough to run everything because we didn't get to spec them. So we kind of had to find like, okay, which of the customizations are we going to do in real time? Which ones are going to pre? I think we still ended up with like we had to make another project that was an automated pre-renderer
Right, to
to
feed.
render 1,000 clips,
Yep, I know exactly what you mean.
and then trying to get that to site over Dropbox is not great.
It's
But
not fun. It's not easy.
yeah,
Uh, I got one more before
great.
we do virtual
Yeah, you
production.
got more? Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
Let's
I
do
think
it, and
I
then we
think
can
this
dive
one's
in.
fun, man. I think this one's fun. I'll just say it briefly.
Oh, I like that. Oh, I'm already vibing with this.
All right, so I got a call from a friend, and he had a signage company that had LED had these LED trucks, and we've all seen the LED trucks running around town with advertisements. And he wanted to add some extended functionality to them. And long story short is, I talked him into a geolocating project. So I know this kind of LED is kind of hard
Oh,
to
that's
see here,
cool.
but so long story short, I know I say that saying too much, but I'm working on it. Is this truck drives around with a GPS in it, touch design. This is 100% TouchDesigner driven, and it uses an API, Google APIs, to like, let's just take this brand Dunkin' in particular. And as the truck drives, it will tell you the people who are, it tells you, hey, it's 11.6 miles, 17 minutes to this Dunkin' Donuts. And they could even do things where like, hey, come get your free coffee in 2 minutes over here at this location. Ask about it for details. And so, that was kind of the premise. And so as this truck would drive around, it would always point you to the nearest location for that brand and tell you how
That's
to get
funny.
there. I even put the map on the side for a while, but like
Yeah.
we decided that was too distracting, people trying to look at a map. So
Yeah.
yeah, we built this all in TouchDesigner. I have the project here. I'll just the project's not that exciting, so I probably might not go in it too much. But since this was a customer delivery, kind of what I wanted to point out here is sometimes, I don't know if you do this, but I give them EXEs. So like my whole package is locked up into an EXE. So I use Touch Pro and I lock the toes down so they can't be
Mm.
opened and everything. And then I launch everything with a bat file. Okay, will be the
Mm.
launch in the background. But then what I'll do is I'll turn that bat file through a lot of online resources into an EXE. So that way, like we're delivering a client this Lime Player EXE that is actually launching bats of toes and other sub processes I need from the bat file, but I'm turning it into an EXE and giving that little EXE package to the client. And I found that like
Oh, that's interesting.
I find that like pseudo technical clients, when they pay, like if they pay 5 grand, 10 grand, 100 grand, like they want that EXE.
Yeah.
and I've found that by me delivering an EXE this way, it really gives them like it really is like, hey, you have an executable. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, they still have to install TouchDesigner on those systems and all that kind of stuff, but this is locked up, and it's also locked up in a way where nobody can get my super special secret sauce that I've
Yeah.
worked the last 40 years of my life on. So not really,
Hmm.
but it just locks everything up. So that way other developers and other people who can't meddle, right. And mess your stuff up. So yeah, that's kind of just what I wanted to, one little thing there.
And how hard is that process of turning that bat file into an EXE? Because I've never done it, but
Oh
that sounds
yeah,
like
super
really
easy, man.
interesting.
There's a few online resources, some tools you can buy,
Yeah.
and you can even extend the functionality. Like there's one tool I think you can buy for $70 that I used one time that will actually give you a splash screen option. So you can actually create your
Ooh.
own splash screen, and as a business owner that provides software solutions, and even as other developers out there, it really gives you a polished look, right? You're not like this,
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like that's a lot of folks in the chat might be thinking, well, does it worth it to turn a bat to an EXE? Changing a tomato for a tomato. But when it comes to real life and making money and paying bills, a shinier tomato is better than the. Hey, listen, my parents got a farm. The tomatoes all come out looking all like crazy. We eat them; they're delicious, but they look crazy. Like you can't like sell those tomatoes to the average customer because they're gonna be like, why does that look like three tomatoes that got wedged together in like a weird science experiment? And I think that a bat file is very much like that. Like it works for us. You double click it, it does stuff. You launch it from Windows Task Schedule. But giving somebody an application, that's one of those things where it's like you can charge extra just because you did that
And,
5 minute
not
step.
everybody knows what a bat file is. And so if Bob gets in that van for the first time and has to launch it, I mean, he probably knows what an EXE is if he has to go find it.
Mm.
So just trying to make things simpler for people. Yeah, exactly. And to your point, all good points.
So I think with that said, diving into the virtual production part.
Yeah.
Now, we got so many topics. Where do you think? Do you want to start with the high level, like, because I think I've said the word data center a few times, and you've said data center, but for a lot of folks, they might not know, like, what does that mean? You're remoting into your computer. Do you go to a data center? What is a data center? Like, for folks that don't know, can you talk just like a few brief moments about that?
Yeah, I have a photo. All right, hold on. All right, here we go. This is my data center photo. So
Is that the data center building?
That's our building. Yeah, that's our
It
place.
looks nice.
Yeah,
I was
thanks.
expecting like, one of those like big, single floor warehouse.
Right. Oh
But
yeah,
this
yeah,
this
yeah.
looks like
This is in the
this looks like a
basement,
nice
and
fancy office building.
it's in
Yeah.
downtown LA, like right on Skid Row. So there's actually a lot of tents and tarps around it,
Yeah.
which they don't show in this
That's
picture.
security.
Yeah, they
Extra
don't show in this
security.
picture. But so so to back it up just a little bit, if you're trying to do a remote production, you don't want to use your internet at home, right? And
Mm,
I won't go into the reasons, but there's a lot of reasons. One of them being an
yeah.
outage, and if you lose outage, then your 10,000 attendees are also going to have an outage. So a data center is extremely important. It's a dust-free environment, 7 degrees constantly, and it's a place where all the internet happens, right? It's where all the internet, all the stuff that happens, happens there. So the big advantages of the data center are our particular data center. We have 12 service providers that come into there. So AT&T, Cox, blah blah blah, all of them, right? They come in there. We don't go down. Data center, the internet doesn't go down. And also because we have those 12 service providers, we have lower latency access to people. So you have people that are streaming at
Mm,
home. You're streaming on Bell, or probably in Canada, you're probably on Bell, or Rogers is the other one, right? Or maybe they're the same
yeah.
now. Sorry, but there's going to be a Rogers or a Bell connection in my data center, so I'm not going through AT&T's network and Cox's network to get to you're able to come straight
Hmm.
into my data center, right? And that does, it's lower latency and it's more reliability because we're not having to go through those other things. And then there's just structurally what it is. Like, this place is situated below ground. It's seismically, protected. Of course, we're in California there. Um, it has power redundancy, three-way. It has the main power, it has UPS power, and they have generators there as well. I'd like to say that our data center and where we're at can go 29 days without food and water. Like, it literally, if there's an earthquake in
Wow.
downtown, it does not need anything. No water, no access, nothing for 29 days. It can run on its own. And so even if we have a natural disaster in the area, hopefully within 29 days we would have power restored, and I can still have
Yeah.
my events. And so it's a really stable way whenever you have professional clients, to deliver a professional product. And plus it makes it easy for everybody to can gain access to these computers because you have a direct connection from your provider, right? I have a direct connection from my
Hmm.
provider, so we remote into these machines, which is what we do. So what I physically did, I'm sorry if I'm bouncing a bit, but we couldn't get AWS. Anybody who's worked with Amazon or other,
Well, that's what we just had a question.
okay,
JP was asking any thoughts on AWS or other cloud services, and I know Rob asked earlier, have you worked with Microsoft Azure
yeah,
much?
I'll give my opinions on systems. Uh, Most of this information is relatively recent. What we had right at COVID, so in March of 2020, I started, I started looking at online production, how to do this. I looked at all the major service providers. Our clients primarily use AWS, so that's
Hmm.
where we landed with some of these productions. But I looked at all of them. Uh, Cloudalize, uh, Linode. I mean, we looked at all of them, right? We tried
Hmm.
to deal with all of it. First off, let me say, as I think we probably all feel, that the big computers that you can actually do stuff with are overpriced. So
Yeah.
what I found was I couldn't get a computer that had an equivalent of a P6000 or a 1080, which is all I didn't need. 2080 Ti's or RTX 6000. I needed, just like
Hmm.
1080, and I couldn't really find that. Um, your Amazon at the time, they've just recently updated some of the centers, but at the time had M series cards. Up until, dude, like 2 months ago, they had M series cards, which isn't
Hmm.
enough for me to do some of my productions, and they just
I
literally
mean,
won't.
that's almost three. That's 2 or 3 gens
It's
old
three
now by this
gens old,
point.
man. 3 gens old.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's not acceptable. And then the CPUs that we were looking at are all Xenons, and they're very long in the tooth.
I can't do the Xeons,
Yeah,
bro.
bro.
It's
Well, you know
just
what I mean? I mean, like 2.3 clock speed. Yeah, sure, I have 32 of them, but dude, I can't sit here and wait. Like, my cycle speed is
yeah.
5 gigahertz on the new stuff, right? And this is
Yeah.
2.3. So the performance of the computers was abysmal. So that's when I started looking at data centers. We already owned some beefy machines because of our LED work.
Like your rigs and touring
And
and
so, like,
production
I'll
and stuff.
just real
Yeah.
quick, our rigs. consist of two main GPUs. So, and we only use Quadra or professional series cards, now the A series. We only use those
Mm.
for a couple of big reasons. First reason is direct to GPU for the SDI IO. So it offloads the CPU and decreases the latency. I worked with Malcolm on that a lot for the AJA, for the Aja cards and the
Mm.
Blackmagic to get that latency down and the improved performance. And then, so we have two main cards that we run in a mosaic. Okay. So we run both cards together and group them in large mosaics. And then we run a P6000 or a small card for the local UI. So my big
Mm.
cards can go and work, draw the big 16K canvases, and then I have a local UI where I can still interact with the computer, check the resources, check my email. No, not really, but whatever
Yeah,
I need
yeah,
to do, why my big GPUs are getting tied up. So that's just kind of, so we had all that kind of stuff. We brought all the servers down into our thing.
And I should insert a quick little point here because there's a lot of words coming out and there's a lot of technical things. And if folks aren't comfortable with that, don't worry. No, don't worry. I mean, this is the meat. We got to go. We got to get in this. But if folks are kind of unfamiliar with a lot of these things, check out our other YouTube videos. We got a lot of stuff talking about this. If you're in the HQ Pro, we recently did a whole workshop that was all about multi GPU, multi machine setups, talking about Mosaic, Affinity, like all these kind of things. We'll put links and stuff in the chat, but that sounds like, and one thing I think we should also clarify is, because I think a lot of people have this idea that the internet is like, the packets leave your computer and hit the internet. but there's a lot of layers to the internet, and that like VPNs traverse you between different parts of the layers, and that when we're talking about the latency here, we're essentially saying that like in the data center, you're able to communicate to different services, different service providers, different other kind of data centers at a lower level. You actually don't hit the internet and have to do the trip. You're just like, oh well, we just hop over from our data center to the other data center, and now we're talking to this person, this service provider, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct. Yeah. Sorry if that's why I don't do tutorials. I make too many.
Don't worry, bro. That's team effort. Team effort. You give it the meat, and then I'll come in afterwards with like the sign language of like these are the words.
But we took all those big machines and we put them in the data center, and because we had a battle royale to do, a battle royale show, and you have 100 people streaming on a battle royale show, so I had to figure out how to get a production with 100 live feeds done, and so that's really what spawned us to do the data center and to at a high level, and bring everything in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a pretty, what sounds like such a simple idea, like let's take a computer and put it in the data center, I think to me is kind of like a revolutionary.
Yeah, because like you gotta have ways for people to work, right? So we use Parsec so people can log into the machines remotely. It's for me, I'll have 3 or 4 machines running at a time. These aren't virtual machines, right? I need the whole GPU. I need the whole CPU. You're right. If I'm going to do if we're going to get jiggy with it, I can't use virtual machines for those reasons. Now, the way our production works, primarily is we take in the world into our center, we composite, we do things to those graphics, and then we deliver that to our clients, right? So we're we're taking that, and so we're receiving that into our. So we have to have ways for people to work. So we built a whole set of tools integrating. So we have to remember that the operators that come and run the shows are trained to use specific pieces of equipment. So I didn't want to train them. I mean, I don't have the time or the wherewithal to train them on new ways. So we used existing equipment workflows, and we modified us to. Is it the best way to do it? No, it's not. But what it is it's a proven way that works, that allows people to hit the ground running that have experience, right? And so that's kind of what we built. So here I just kind of show an operator portal. I took a Blackmagic ATEM, the software that runs the ATEM, and I integrated it into TouchDesigner. We built a web UI for it to actually run the ATEM that looks
that's awesome.
Just like the ATEM. It literally looks identical to it. And then I brought in monitors. and so you can see your preview and program monitors. And so a guy who uses an ATEM Blackmagic switch, they literally hit the ground running here and program shows and didn't have to even ask me questions, you know?
That's amazing. That's so smart. I think that's, and we're going to talk about like, when we get the hyper signal at the end and stuff, like, I think that's one of the things I really love about your work is, because I don't, I think there's a little bit of similarity between us where we see a problem, then we try to solve it, and then we're like, well, this is a deeper infrastructure problem. Let's go one level deeper, right? And like us when we started the HQ, and I think it's really similar with you kind of like taking that next step. Let's go find some data centers and put servers in them. I love that, especially like even with the Blackmagic thing. Like, is it the best workflow? Like, probably not, but in the real world, having that ability to just be like, here's the thing, you can now work without too much stress.
Yeah, you can use it online now.
That's such a huge thing.
Yeah, it was for me. I thought we were excited about it. We put a lot of work into it, and we did some great events. We're still doing some good events out of it. So yeah, absolutely.
And I see Evan's in the chat. Hey, what's up, Evan? And big shout out to Evan. Evan also helps us a ton with the championship and operating.
And Evan helps me a lot with the building of this cloud infrastructure. Evan was integral part of that as well, for sure. So,
Evan, can you drop your link in the chat so if people want to check out more of your stuff, and we'll also share it here also.
Yeah. So I just kind of showed, we integrated like what I said, we just brought that stuff in, and so that way people can use it. So that's kind of where the data center origins kind of started out. Now I could go into a data center project, the CDL one, or we can do, because they both kind of tie into each other, and the virtual production workflow.
And so are you talking about the Raspberry Pis? Because I think the Raspberry Pis are like a fun way to start, and then that'll kind of lead us into the actual projects behind the scenes, I think.
Okay. So let me talk about COVID just real quick. So when COVID happened, we did live shows. Everybody had to go home. I was talking about it earlier. What I did was we made about 400 of these Raspberry Pis. And I built those myself.
And to give context for these before you go, because at those live events, like for a lot of these esports things, what often happens is you got the stages and the screens, you got all the competitors and like players sitting at their stations, and everyone has their own webcam. And then a lot of the time what you'll see in these broadcasts is like, as things are happening, you'll have all these pip. It's similar to like if you look at the old last year's championship where, competitors had their screen and their camera in the bottom corner. Like that kind of vibe is very present in esports. And you always, especially when somebody like dunks on somebody else, you want to see like the losers. Or when somebody gets like blasted, they're like, oh no, like we love that. And so that's what you're talking about, where everyone used to do that live. And now all of a sudden, since everyone is still competing but at home.
Yeah. So
cue in those Raspberry Pis.
Exactly. And so here's where a little business behind it is you have sponsors. So you have like a headphone sponsor, and in the contract, the players have to be visible wearing the headphones. And so are you going to lose those millions of dollars on that sponsorship because you can't show the players wearing headphones? No, you call Azimuth Digital. We're here to solve.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
We're the hot rod shop for video. Like we build custom hot rods. That's what we do. It's kind of explain it to people. So
I like the analogy.
So they called us. That's what we did. Let me screen share a couple of things here from.
Yeah, I got the screen up still.
I got a VNC thing opening real quick so I can show you the Pi.
Do you want me to hide the screen while you're doing VNC?
No, it's cool. It should be cool. Okay. Let me get here. Why connect to it? Okay, so it's small because it's a Raspberry Pi. So let me make this bigger. So here's the application we built. It's pure Python. Okay, and what it does is this streams. This is the display of the Raspberry Pi, and this streams to our servers. Everybody gets a one of these. We put a little support button. There's the idea here is that the teams, how can I explain this best? While they're in competition, so 4 versus 4 players stream to our data centers, and we make graphics out of that, and give that to the production so they can do things. And I'll show you what that is. But so this is our application. We're going to hit stream. I have a web camera plugged into it, as you can see so now I'm now streaming. This is what you see on the Raspberry Pi. Now let me go into our data center. Okay, here's our data center. So here's our application that I built that controls all the cameras and stuff, right? And so what we have over here are all the individual player positions. As you can see, I'm in one of them right now. We have, these are the feeds that go out to the show, okay? And so we have multiple feeds. If you notice, these are broadcast ready. Look, I got transitions when we go between everything. Nothing's going to be a cut. Nothing's going to be, this is all smooth and ready to hit the air, right? Like our stuff is ready to go. And so we have these feeds, and then we can also solo cam and look at all the individuals. When I switch teams, we automatically get a transition to go between everything. So again, my point is that these things are ready to go, ready for air. We also have another feed that we provide. I'll show you here. It's called it's 8 people. And so this is all live, all 8 people. Okay. And if you look, we have the names, right? We have everything is already in. There's sponsors. All of this is automated. And what we do is we have all the players for the guys. We literally just drag. I do a lot of drag and drop. We literally, drag, players in here, and that pulls in their name and all the information for them. One of the big things that we have, is players like sitting like this, right? Hey, I'm playing my game. Look, I'm in the bottom corner of my frame. That doesn't make sponsors happy, right?
Yeah.
So here's what I came up with, man. We came up with a little zoom feature, right? And now we can come in here and pan and move these guys around to get a better shot of them, because so that's kind of one of the features. Another thing that we had to do for this particular is because we're at home, you have cheating. Cheating can be an issue. So we have a whole secondary camera system here that deals with secondary cameras called integrity cameras that show players' hands or computers that aren't in the broadcast, that are there for security, right? To make sure this particular event is $6 million prize. Okay. So this is, it's real money, right? And so we bring, this is where that stuff comes in. This is where we do all of those feeds and make all that magic happen. One other thing real quick I'll show, we provide a portal or a panel. Elburz, we use the same tool on and this
judging.
Allows everybody who's in the production, they can come here and see all of the live feeds. We also provide some multi-view feeds and other things like that. Here's I have relatively low latency in my systems, all things considered. So this is kind of we have multiple games that we do this for, that we run these. There's one on right now, broadcast right now, so I can't really go in there, but that's player cams.
So I think the really crazy part about that is because the workflow itself is I think very straightforward in the sense of okay, well, all these people went home, so now we have to live stream them.
Right.
And now we had to get their cameras to come into your server, which already is kind of crazy. Like that, you gotta start from that bar of tons and tons of cameras live streaming into your system, plus their screens, plus the integrity cams, plus. But then the Raspberry part I think was interesting because when you told me about it before too, one of a couple of the areas where you went towards that road for were one just reliability, basically plug a webcam in, plug the Ethernet in, plug the power in. Literally, they don't have to touch it, right? Most of the time, it's basically ready to roll. And then offloading that processing from their system, which I think is something that might interest a lot of folks from our industry, because
that's the whole reason behind this from the league standpoint is we don't want to have anything running on those computers. Again, this isn't child's play. This is real. This is for the real beans, right?
This is sports. This is
real sports.
This is big boy
$6 million,
sports. This is
right? This is real.
Yeah.
And so there is no, and by the way, the computers are supplied by the league too. Okay. So it's not like they're playing on their own machines, but this offloads. There's no chance that us as the production can interfere with the outcome of the match, right? That's really what it's about. is not being able to do that. And the cost of Raspberry Pis is not astronomical. I mean, the boards themselves are about $50. So
yeah. And that's if you buy like the high end one. Like,
that's if
did you end up buying the?
I did.
Was that the? Because was that the 3B?
It's a 4. I have the 4B plus.
Oh, you got 4s. Yeah, 4B plus. Yeah, so that's so even on the highest end one, like $50, and then you and I guess the cool thing about this is the fact that you scaled this up, right? Like this wasn't like 5 Raspberry Pis that you made.
It's 400
and shipped out.
Yeah,
it's 400.
So we have them all over the world. We have them streaming to us from Guangzhou, China, all the way to Bangalore. You know, like literally all the way around the world. A little Raspberry Pi, it'll chug along.
That's crazy. So, and for folks that are, you know, I see some questions. What are essentially what happens is we had all these players. They were in arenas before. They had the cameras on them to get the faces and the sponsor stuff. And then now that, you know, once COVID happened, everyone had to go home, but they're still competing. Because this is like kind of you know, real sports, quote unquote. I don't have like a better way to put it. Because this is real sports. You know, they don't want production companies installing stuff on the league supplied computers. You know, especially from a competitive standpoint, they don't want extra latency or the chance that something crashes in the background or anything like that. So then Walker's solution was basically taking this Raspberry Pi and turning it into these micro streaming boxes where essentially, like, you know, if there's 5 players on a team, all 5, each one gets a Raspberry Pi, their webcam gets plugged in, Ethernet gets plugged in, power gets plugged in, and automatically that spits that video stream right back to you, and then you composite it in your system into all of the kind of like broadcast layouts and stuff like that.
Exactly. And they show up here in this little centerpiece here. I'm using an API with and so they automatically streams that are available we're parsing by name, but as soon as streams are available, they show up here and we can just literally drag them over, you know, and to make it super easy, because you're right. The hardest part of this whole thing is in a game day, you'll have 7 or 8 matches with 12 or 10 players each match. And so you're talking 80 or 90 players. You have 2 leagues running. We're talking a couple hundred players every weekend of streams. You have to get in the right hole at the right time with the right name, right?
Yeah. Which is no small task, by the way.
No, luckily I don't have to do it. I just built the tool, and we have great people that, you know, that run this stuff for us.
And JP's got a question here. Is that Decaffeine Player your creation? I don't know what that is. What is that?
Yeah, Decaffeine Player is an open source project to bring NDI to Raspberry Pis. So say we have a LAN event where we're on a local network. This would allow me to use Raspberry Pi still in that environment and still be able to use the software tools that I've already built for the production and not have to retool.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So yeah.
And you made that? Like you're behind
No, that's an open source project. So
Oh, okay, I see. Oh, okay, I misunderstood. Yeah. So that's an open source project. Sounds pretty cool though. Sounds interesting.
It is. It's a good.
I'm surprised it wasn't like. I mean, I feel like Raspberry Pi and NDI is kind of like a match made in heaven.
It's starting to come. There was a couple people worked really hard on the video acceleration, OMX, which is like their NVEC chip right there. And so now that's, not to get too far into the weeds with Raspberry Pi, but that's when I got involved, is now that there's hardware acceleration, that then made 1080 video viable. Without it, it's kind of hard. Okay.
So I think that's like probably... So now we've talked about this idea of like from the broadcast standpoint, the kind of technology infrastructure, but then there's still another layer. You know, if everyone is impressed by the data center layer, and then like now you're like doubly impressed by everything we just talked about, now then you would put it into a virtual production environment. And I mean, was that something that clients got you onto? Was that something that you kind of wanted to explore yourself? How did you even like get into that kind of virtual production side of like? And I mean virtual production being such a vague term, but like more the 3D.
Yeah, I saw opportunity to sell to clients, and if you build it, they'll come. I hate to say it that way, but like not all people have a mind's eye. Right, I've learned, especially for some reason, my clients in particular.
Almost none of the clients ever.
Ever have a mind's eye.
By the way,
so you have to actually show them
Yeah.
what it is. And I think one thing I want to make or something I would like to say to other people working or inspiring to work in this environment is don't be scared to build it, even if it costs money, because if your idea is good and you believe in it, um, you're going to sell it. You may not. I've
Mm-hmm.
had projects I've spent money on that have sat for a year, but then they go. They do go. If you have good ideas and you have to believe in yourself, and that's what we did here. I'm not a 3D expert. I don't claim to be, but I'm doing a ton of 3D work now. Had to
Mm-hmm.
learn stuff. I found Blender to be a great tool for that. Me personally, I like the community and the environment.
And I'll also put in the shill. The HQ Pro, we're just about to drop in the next like day or two a 4 hour introduction to Blender for interactive artists. That's going to be super hype.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it. I would struggle to say there's a better open source tool in our industry, right? Like,
No, and it does so much. And if you take the time to, I hate to say learn Blender because it's really learning 3D,
yeah,
and you can take these things and use them elsewhere. But the way that they lay it out to me was just very intuitive. Starting at 2.8, 2.9 versions.
yeah. When they
Yeah,
did the big UI thing and
yeah,
they dumpstered like half of the game engine, which I thought
yeah,
was genius, by the
exactly.
way.
Which was yeah, but now it's great. So I saw opportunity with clients to do this. We've always dabbled in Unreal and Unity and did some. We've done some AR, augmented reality, traditional, not
Mm-hmm.
broadcast aug, but like traditional phone kind of AR projects. We did some
Yeah,
stuff for John Deere. I didn't think it was quite as sexy, so I didn't show it, but
yeah.
I saw opportunity here. So an XR environment, XR stages with camera tracking, and so my business partner and I decided, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're gonna do an XR gig. Back in the day, we wanted to do huge projection mapping. Okay, we've done it. Now we want to do these types of events, and so we just
Mm-hmm.
went in 100%. I don't know how
Yeah.
else to say it. So went 100%. And so like what I kind of show here is like our pipeline, a little bit of what we do and the tools that we use to get there in our virtual productions. And I'm going to show. I've removed some logos from this project so I can show it. A lot of projects I can't show because of NDAs and stuff, but this one I
Well,
will be able.
thanks for taking the time to do
Yeah, no
that for
problem.
folks. I think that's
No,
like
no problem.
it's a tough thing, especially when you work on a lot of projects and you're always trying to like beat around the bush about what. Even I was talking about the one with the animals and I'm like, okay,
Yeah, how do
which words to avoid, which words to say.
right.
It's so I appreciate that you took the time to do that for
Yeah, and
folks.
I think this is a cool. So just high level, very quickly, a very traditional pipeline for these types of events is going to be using, you through 3D software and eventually execution in Unreal Engine for your
Mm,
virtual environment. That's a very popular thing. I think Unreal Engine's great. It's very, a great tool. To me personally, it's a little unruly, right?
yeah,
We're not a big team. We're two guys. We do all this stuff, two guys, right? We pack a
yeah,
big punch in a small group. Most Unreal projects would require multiple developers, and so that to me is where it doesn't work for us as well as maybe it does for others. And so
mm,
what I found that works really well for us, and fortunately the guys at Notch have spent a lot of time in virtual productions in the last year, especially after COVID, and we use their tool set for and
yeah,
TouchDesigner, and I find that uh, our personal workflow is Blender, Notch, and then final execution out of Playout and TouchDesigner in a media server. We found that to be much quicker. Changes seem to be much more fluid, and it takes less expertise. Like, um, you know, I can usually learn something to get the task done, but I don't retain that knowledge. And then if we get on show site and they're
that's me
like,
in a nutshell.
and then
I know
you get on
exactly
show
how
site
that
and they're
is,
like,
bro.
yeah, Walker, that thing you did with the swirling thing that spins us out with that, we need to make that a little smaller. And I'm going to be like, I need to go back to my reference materials to try. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
just can't do that. So our workflow between Notch Touch Designer works really well, I think, for smaller teams. Okay. Um, and can be more dynamically powerful. When you have I don't want to go too much, but when you have a smaller group making decisions, you can be more decisive and you can have better
mm-hmm.
creative output if you have good leadership than having too many people involved and then everybody has a voice and it can get kind of muddied. The original
Yeah,
concepts can get lost. So I like to work in a small team be very decisive and get things done. So onto the workflow, onto the technical side. So we start off with Blender from scratch. This is a project for a customer that we built because we knew they would like it. Like they didn't know they wanted it. I knew they wanted it. That's the best way I can.
I love that. I love that about you, bro. That you're always going. Your eyes are open. I don't know how to say it, but your eyes are open.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I've always, and this is stuff we like to do. When you're passionate about things, it always works better. So, we have a 3D modeler that we worked with. He helped us get this model done. He works in 3ds Max and stuff. He brought this model over to me. I brought it into Blender. I did all of the texturing. Made all the glass. What we'll do is we'll block all of our camera shots, right? We'll set everything up in here, so we can see how things are going to look, how we want things to.
Oh, that's great.
To move, how it feels. It's a very powerful tool to do all that. So we'll do all the visualizations and pre-visualizations here. And look, this is basically running real time, dude, by the way, if you notice.
Yeah. Which is awesome.
You can't do this in a lot of other 3D packages. I'll say that. Like, here's my animation that I created for a little drop down, almost running in real time without the proper lighting. So all of that'll happen here. All the mods all UVs get done. All the hard work all happens here in Blender. Okay. We'll export that out. Let me get the next project open, so you guys got to bear with me. Notch takes a bit to load.
Yeah, a couple interesting things in there. I think everyone loves using TouchDesigner integrated with anything. I don't, we don't gotta everyone's sold. I think there's still a lot of people trying to make up their minds between Notch and Unreal.
Yeah.
I think the perspective that you give was really interesting about feeling like it needs more dev power on the Unreal side of things. And it kind of resembles my experience. And I think both tools are amazing. I love using both tools and like dealing with them. But to your point, they're actually very different tools. I almost find Notch feels, and I think my good friend Josue said this to me, Notch isn't for, Notch is for a TouchDesigner person getting Notch, but Notch is great for people coming from MoGraph, coming from that pure content creation mindset. Mm-hmm. That's really what Notch is, that in real time.
Yeah.
And when you integrate it with Touch, like you get like the quick integration with Notch blocks, controls from Touch, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Unity, to your point, this is another big application that you're having to learn, wrangle, manage in parallel to TouchDesigner, set up the pipes yourself kind of thing. And, there's some benefits to that, but there's also the trade-offs to that. And it really is like, one of the things that excites me about Unreal is that it feels like a AAA environment. It feels like an environment that like pros work in. So that's kind of exciting. But to your point also, it means like, I have to like learn all these things and like get kind of good at them. Whereas in Notch, it feels a lot more like Notch reminds me of Touch in the sense where I'm a little bit more run and gun and like safe while being run and gun.
It's more intuitive.
Whereas Unreal, like run and gun can kind of go south real quick.
Very quickly. Yeah.
So I thought that was just an interesting thing, like just to kind of put in my 2 cents in there.
Yeah, no, that's good feedback. To be blunt, you can do more in Unreal. Like, right, you can get more dynamic environments, and with their scalable outputs and stuff in multiple machines, we could run environments that are just like unbelievable, right? But is that needed? Is that needed for a virtual production? Yeah. No, it's really not. We're not building a battle royale virtual production, are we? You know what I mean? Mm. We're not. And so I find that Notch really fits the bill well for these types of things. Yeah. And really, it's not even it is Notch, but it's the integration to TouchDesigner, which I'm going to show. That's where the secret sauce really becomes powerful. Yeah. Right. So just a little bit about what I have here in Notch. We will export from our Blender project. A couple of things that I think that are important is you got to have a good UV set. You can't have in Notch to get performance. You have to have all the lighting baked, right? Especially for something that's complex like this. It's very, very, very important. And you'll see in my node graphs here that everything
you got all the geometry
everything
frozen.
is baked, right?
Oh, yeah. Look at that.
Because we just can't get performance out of it. Otherwise, I don't want to say Notch is heavy. It's not, but lighting is heavy, and so we just need to bake
Yeah.
everything. And so I have a process. If anybody's interested, you can reach out to me, where we get PBR materials out of the Blender project, and we put it in here, and we can go to Notch, and most of those materials will transfer over. And then in here we're doing broadcast, and so I need multiple cameras. So we have to have multiple
Yeah.
exposable cameras here that'll be controlled by touch, so we can preview and program, right? So we can move, figure out what we want, establish our shot, and then have the other camera move or then animate to it. So we add that functionality. If we wanted to have like gimmicks, like we call somebody and it's a screen pops up, or all of that work would get built here, those types of animations. None of the camera work gets done here. This is just like functional looking, good looking ray traced sets. So the work here, I don't want to say is straightforward, but it is more straightforward. You're just integrating the work that you did in Blender.
Yeah, and I think most of the work that you're doing in here, that is I almost said butter on the rice, but that's like the most Iranian thing would have ever said in my life. It's the butter on the rice, but it's the work you're doing, setting up the exposable cameras, the structure of how you're going to integrate it. That's more where the elements of your work inside of Notch are coming into. Because to your point, like bringing in the model, if you already have the bake lighting, assign the PBR materials, set up the environment a little bit, that's pretty standard Notch stuff.
It is, and it's just adding a little functionality. The trick here, and I've done a couple of posts on it, is getting the UV sets right. If you're creating your own sets, in your own, it's getting the UV so the lights will bake correctly into Notch. And if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to go through that. But so that's where the hard part is. Once that's done, and then you're pretty good. I mean, your project will be performant, run at a high frame rate, and we can save that out as a Notch block. Is what I do, right? And so we start off in Blender, we come into Unreal, into Notch, and then we finally will end up in TouchDesigner with our Notch block with our two cameras. And here I am waving. And so this is a simple setup that we would use for. We're going to be using this type of setup for the interactive challenge, right? And so what we have here on the left is my preview camera, and this is what's going to tell me, this is like my preview, it's my setup shot. And then I have two buttons here that we can either animate so the camera that's live is the camera on the right. Okay, so this is the live camera, the one that moved. That's the one that's outputting to the to the event. So I can kind of move stuff around, right? And then we can save that to positions, or any position I put this camera into, when I animate it, the secondary camera will move. And so this is how we have a show, right? I have a wide shot, we have a desk shot, we have a one shot of just me up close. We can also cut to these positions, so we're not stuck with animations. This is a very simple one. I have some where we can go in and tweak the animations and stuff. But this is the basic idea of how these work. And so and then we could show content on that LED screen if we wanted to, and pull all this stuff back. And so in TouchDesigner, it's pretty straightforward. There's a video, but here's my live NDI feed, and it's already keyed out because I'm using it somewhere else. And it comes into some exposable parameters we made into Notch with those two cameras. I am using the camera component from a TouchDesigner, and I forgot. I'm going to tell you which one it is. It's called.
Is that the arc ball one?
It's not the arc ball one. It's the one where you can touch and move. And then what I do is I come in and modify it and change the render containers and stuff. And make a few modifications, so that way we're able to have control, right?
Yeah. I see. So you're using it as the control mechanism to give you the transform. Oh, that's very clever.
And then I'm using the this is kind of done badly, so don't hate me. But so I'm having to get crazy because I'm having to use like the transform matrices and
Hmm.
like the position, because you can't animate a a transform matrix. Uh, I couldn't figure out how to do it without screwing up the animation. So I'm
Hmm.
actually using a couple methods to recall the camera positions, but I kind of stripped this down so it was just kind of down and dirty to the basics of
Yeah.
what's needed for virtual production. Obviously, these are all target screens, like the black places everywhere.
Yeah.
Those all would have content on them. I just had to remove it
Yeah.
for this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a question from Aristotle in the chat asking, "Is that done with the multi-camera node in Notch?" And I think it is. That's how you had it set up, right, to
It
get the
is.
two
It
views
is the
out.
multi-camera node. I was going to try to show it, but I think I already closed the project. Yeah, it's done with the multi-camera node, and then I put the two cameras in, two
The two
exposable cameras in,
exposables,
and just make
child of
sure
those.
you
Yeah.
expose the parameters of both cameras. Otherwise, and then I render out a 38, 40 wide, single, you know,
Yeah, and then you
that's
have
my
both
notch block,
cameras
right?
basically left and right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then here's the exposable parameters for the stuff that I that we brought in.
That's amazing. And you know what I really like about this is I feel like there's a lot of times when people talk about virtual production, and obviously the XR stage side of it gets a little bit more complicated once you have tracking systems and stuff like that. But I really love how you kind of broke this down into such almost a straightforward workflow, right? Like, and for folks that are watching, like these are the kind of things that Walker's helping us with for the championship, and we're gonna have this whole really nice virtual kind of production arena for the championship coming up. And I like how it really feels like, build a venue in Blender, and then you have some tricks in there for doing things like just prevising where your cameras are going to be at, baking lighting, getting materials and UV maps set up correctly, import those into Notch, or if folks are using Unreal, like import those into Unreal, basically expose controls for the two cameras, send that texture over to TouchDesigner, and then in TouchDesigner, basically you're controlling two cameras in that space and assigning textures where they need to go, whether it's for the hosts or guests or people, or whether it's for the screens.
Right.
I think that's like a really cool and straightforward and powerful workflow. Like, we're doing this with venues, but I'm curious, like, and this is maybe a little bit going into the future, like, where do you think this kind of stuff is going to go? Because I think this is the beginning of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I think that hybrid events. That's what I'm
Yeah.
seeing now. It's hybrid events where we have both, because we're having to mask mandates just happened here in the West again in the States.
Mm.
So in Vegas, I think it kicked in today. In LA, it's been for a couple of days. So what does that do to our live events again? Right. So fortunately, by just natural, we're covered on both ends, right? But
Yeah.
like I think hybrid events is where this is going. We're going to see live events with smaller groups of people, right?
Mm.
No, maybe not sporting events, but esports events and other events, corporate events. We're going to see them traveling maybe only 1,800 people when they used to travel maybe 10,000 or something.
10,000
And
or
then you're going to
something. Yeah.
have two elements to it: a hybrid like what we have here, and then the reels. That's where I really think it's going. Um,
Mm.
I think that there's going to be people are going to take advantage, and we're going to see a lot more ingenuity in sets, and those are going to be easier to get
Yeah.
where we're not having to make as many parts as we do now. But our clientele, we have to make custom sets anyway, so I don't think that's going to go away. But I
Yeah.
think we're going to see a lot more tools with 3D modeling and set building coming.
Well, even like when I was looking for the venue for the championship, like I just went on, I can't remember, I think it
Turbo
was
Squid.
Turbo Squid. I went on Turbo Squid, and I think I literally typed in esports, and all of these like, there was a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire arena pre-built. There was like Price is Right pre-built. Like there was all of these kind of exactly like this kind of virtual stages, virtual environments. So I think to your point, like, folks that are interested in getting into this, like that could be a really great way to just give it a shot, and because those models are like $30, $20, $50, like it's not a huge investment, right? So you could grab something that's pretty cool looking, kit bash some of the parts together, and then just immediately start trying to work with some of these integrations and see what kind of
And
creativity you
just
can come
do
up
it.
with.
Like just do it. Like, I don't know what, just
Yeah.
start putting stuff together. Just start, because then it's when you start to run into the problems and you ask the questions, and you get through it. Uh, there's been a huge investment from all the major companies here in the States. So we have PRG,
Mm.
LMG, uh, um, uh, CT and NEP Group, and all of these big companies have all doubled down on this investment. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
jobs in this as well. I know everybody right now is looking for virtual production people. Everybody.
Oh yeah, and especially like because Unreal did like a really good job, I think, with their both marketing and educational material. I would say because right when virtual productions started to become a thing, Unreal was like, "Yep, we do that. Here's a bunch of blog articles, white
Already,
papers,
yep,
and
yep.
documentation, like ready to go." And everyone's like, "Well, Unreal must be the tool for this job." And I love Unreal, not to love using both of them for those kind of things, but I remember I can't remember who I was talking to recently, but basically they were saying if you know anyone who does Unreal and knows some virtual production, instant job. Like that.
Yeah, there's a ton of them. And what they have, well, right now, 3D modeling. I ran an ad looking for a modeler for 100 days. Um,
Oh really?
and
Wow.
I didn't get anybody who applied that had skills better than myself, which is
Oh,
disappointing.
interesting.
I think which to
Yeah.
me it was disappointing, but in reality, if you're a 3D modeler, you're probably in a pretty good place right now.
Yeah.
You can probably make some good money.
And you think people you think there wasn't that many applications because there's already so much demand for them?
I think so. I think so. The people that I
Yeah.
had, I think if they, yes, I mean, to be honest with you, I think the people I got were straight out of school and they didn't have enough
Yeah.
skills to be marketable. And I scared them. Honestly, I scared people away
Yeah.
with my projects. Like they would be really happy, and then I would show them something and say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And then I wouldn't hear from them again. So maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me.
I wonder if I have that effect. Sometimes I look a little grizzly
Yeah.
I feel like maybe I got that vibe too. But so I think that's a really interesting place. And folks in the chat, feel free to throw some questions. We're nearing the end of the show here. We got about 15 or 20 minutes because we also want to end on time because our good friends Derivative are starting their live stream right when we end. So we'll also drop a link so that you guys can hop from here straight over to there. Oh, and we got the video.
So this
Oh
is
yeah,
the
yeah.
render.
So that's
This is a
the
render
screens.
of the camera
Yeah.
move, just to kind of give you an idea of what this is. A previs we just sent the client. I was trying to show him some rack focus. I honestly didn't spend a lot of time on this, but I was trying to show them some rack focus differences and help them understand what can be done with the virtual set. So this is just rendered out of Blender.
Oh, I like the focus pull.
Yeah, I was just trying to kind of show them that
it's a nice little effect.
it doesn't get used enough in virtual environments, and I think it's like, dude, we have in a virtual environment, I have like a $300,000 camera lens that I can't have in real life. Let's freaking use it.
Yeah, and perfect automation every single
like you
time.
can do these things. This thing called Hitchcock, where you can zoom and do where you push in and you change your iris, so you end up with a bunch of parallax, right? And
that's like the movie La Haine?
Yes.
The bridge scene?
Yes.
Is that the same?
Right, where they're pushing?
Oh my god. This is also, if folks haven't seen La Haine, which I guess is the hatred in French. It's a French movie about the suburbs and like the ghettos outside of Paris. And it has this amazing, if you look up La Haine Bridge,
it's an example of that technique.
Blew my mind.
Yeah.
Blew my mind.
So there's a lot of film techniques you can use here too, and they don't cost anything, right? Because we don't have that.
Yeah.
We don't have to have that expensive lens. Anyway.
Now, I know we had some big LED stuff we wanted to talk about, and also we wanted to talk a little bit about hypersignal. What do you want to dive into? Like, you want to talk about hypersignal? I think hypersignal is pretty cool.
I think big LED we kind of covered. I can't.
Yeah.
You think you have some great information on it, and I would point people to please look at the NVIDIA stuff and the Mosaic. Okay, that's how you and that's how you do big scenes.
Quick question for you here. This was from Rob from earlier, and sorry, Rob, it took so long to get to this, but Rob was asking your thoughts on the NVIDIA Omniverse as a platform, which I don't actually know what that is.
So I'm sorry, one more time. I had a crazy text I had to put down.
Oh, NVIDIA's Omniverse. Do you know much about what that is and what it's doing?
No.
Okay, I don't know what it is. I will just straight up say Rob knows more than me about
you got me, bro.
NVIDIA's latest and greatest.
It's vaguely ringing.
I'm assuming it's I'm assuming it's some kind of AR type of thing, AR XR type of thing. That's my guess. Listen, folks, I just got an RTX for like the first time in my life. I'm very excited. I can green screen myself with a give me a moment to catch up here with technology. Oh, actually, so Greg's saying it's USD shared between many applications. Omniverse. Interesting.
So it's a shared model. That sounds great.
Yeah. So hypersignal. And I guess, do we need the screen up, or should we go back to the 2x2?
We can put it down. I don't have it. Well, I can pull up one thing real quick. Sorry.
Oh, you want to put it? Okay, I'll go back to the screen.
It's nothing.
So I think this is another example. Okay, that's good. I like it. So this is another example of your opportunity. I mean, we're getting to the end of the stream, so yeah. I was gonna say opportunity eyes. It doesn't make any sense though. But your attitude for like you see a problem, you see some of the solutions, you kind of make one for yourself, but then you decide let's push this even beyond just making it for myself.
So Hypersignal came about for the need for a contribution platform, a professional contribution platform based around WebRTC, because we like that low latency technology, and so. When we're doing remote events, what I just did with that, what we're doing right now, we're using a Video Ninja, OBS Ninja. You have to have remote contribution in order to get people in, especially with what was going on. And the problem with, most of the things that are on the market right now is they're not professional, and the point where the video quality isn't as good as it could be, right? And so we've had a lot of issues there. And the workflow, most people are using Zoom. Most people are using Google Meets, and that workflow is horrible. They have like a multi, and they're trying to crop out people from them. You have no audio back to people. There's not a professional environment to do this. And so after doing some shows and being embarrassed, because we couldn't. I mean, we even had problems on our last show, right? I had to cut your audio at times, and so. Over time, I have a great developer, Christoph Newman, who's a great friend of mine. We got together and kind of came up with this idea of Hypersignal. And what it is it's a web-based contribution platform for remote contribution into. So you have people at Fox News that bring in contributors, right? Or MSNBC. To be fair, we'll do both sides. We have whatever it is, right? We have to get contribution in corporate events. Whatever these are, and this is no download. You get a link, much like Video Ninja or something, and you come in, but the quality is superb. The quality is super high quality. We have analytics, so engineers can monitor network conditions, understand what they are, because if you don't know what the problem is, you can't fix it, right? And the workflow for us is extremely simple. You send this to a CEO, they're on air in 2 minutes. Today, we log on half an hour ahead of time to make sure our audio is working, right? All of these things.
I love me OBS, but it definitely there's a little bit of wrangling. Let me grab this person's link. Let me grab this link.
And you're
you mute you over here. I mute you over here. Like there was a bit of that.
You're the CEO of Nabisco. Are you going to deal with that? No. So you can't get the CEO of Nabisco to talk on your show now because he doesn't want to deal with the complexities of to get on air. Or you'll be like, oh, I'll send you a camera kit. It's easy. They're like, whatever. But you send him a link. He clicks on and pops up. Dude, we even took. This is patented. But what we did is we took the screen, the screen where we're at, right, where we have your view, and I can't show you this, but we made a light ring out of it, right? So we use the screen around the outside of your display to come back to bounce back light to light the presenters up, right? So they don't have. Smart. So we're using your own screen.
That's patented, people. That's patented.
Patented. Patent number. Yep, ask me for the number, and I'll give it to you. But we did stuff like that. We tried to be as intuitive as we could to get the highest quality video. And so basically, it's a point-to-point WebRTC where it does all the things that you want to do in a professional collaboration for professional events. Our call feature is being worked on right now. It's the only reason we're not using it here today.
Yeah. So one question we already have is. JP's asking in the chat, can we join the beta of Hypersignal?
Absolutely.
We'll drop your contact info into the chat for folks close to the end, so that if folks want to reach out to talk about Hypersignal, if they have virtual production asks, if they want to use your sweet platform for an event, everyone can reach out to Walker.
Yep.
And then another question we have is, what's the difference between Hypersignal and OBS Ninja? Is it mostly the intuitiveness? Or is there? And I think
Mhm.
it's a little bit of everything, right? It's a little bit of
it's the
everything. There's
quality, it's the
intuitiveness,
quality and the
features,
workflow.
quality.
So the quality is much higher. I really wish I could show you, but when you compare us to the to the to to OBS Ninja, like, or what we do, here's what we do in demos is we start off in a Zoom or a Google call, and then we move over, and then it's just like people are like, oh my god. So
Well, Zoom calls are
the worst.
literally the worst ones. Oh my god.
And it's the workflow. Like as a producer, you can bounce in and talk to the people, bounce them out. You can move people around from destinations. So if you have 3 computers set up in your production, you can actually move the people between the computers. So if you have 7 callers, you can have just 1 computer if you're dealing with the callers one at a time, you know. It really is. It's a simpler way than OBS Ninja, and it's a higher quality, but it costs money because it's a professional platform, right? So
yeah, it's more of like a
and we're going to support you.
We're
going to support your event. So this is like for, you know, for people who have critical, you know, infrastructure that really need to have, you know, CEOs and these types of, you know, contributions made.
Yeah. Which I think, you know, like when we're talking about stuff like the championship, you know, we have some friends who used similar for fundraising events and stuff like that. Like, you know, there's a lot of different uses on the commercial side of things that this would easily, like, I think, sell like hotcakes, to be honest. Like, you know, I want to share it, bro. That's what I'm saying right now.
Yeah, I mean, the people that we've gotten, that's why we need some more beta testers, because like we're going through the UI. Is the UI intuitive? Does this make sense? You know, does this fit your production? You know, like kind of like your workflow. That's what we're working on with people right now, and we're wanting to make sure. So yeah, if you have any interest in it or want to come check it out, by all means hit me up. But we'd be glad to talk to you about it.
It's amazing. Well, thanks for opening that up for our viewers and stuff. We do have a question. How would it perform on less powerful computers? If I recall correctly, with Ninja, the quality is dependent on the worst computer.
Yeah. So here's what we do. It's not dependent on the worst computer in our system. We actually offload the processes to GStreamer, and it'll handle the calls for us. So we have to use Chrome as the engine. So Chrome is limiting to, like, there's a lot of scenarios. If you're for hardware acceleration because that's where your performance increases are going to happen, right? Is with Chrome can hardware accelerate the encode and the decode, right? We also have, so we've opened that up. We have our own. So WebRTC uses RTP as its underlying video transport, right? And RTP is a very common package that I'm very familiar with. And so we're able to manipulate that RTP package to get the most out of it. And so we're not limited to the lowest computer on your network or your slowest computer on your network.
Oh, interesting. So it's.
And then here's like our big tool. Sorry, man. Like one of the big differences between us is, man, I wish I could show it. I'm just not ready to show it. Otherwise I would. It's like, don't
even worry.
So I'm in the studio. You're calling remotely. You call into me. I have full control of your video. I have control in my engineering panel. I have control of what your input is. I can switch your inputs on your camera to different inputs. I have resolution control. I have bandwidth control of audio and video. So from an engineering standpoint, that CEO who doesn't know what input he's even supposed to use, the engineer can get in there,
or why the resolution is so low,
set them all up, get the bandwidth set up, right? You're not trying to talk to him over the phone. Okay, in the right corner, you're going to see a camera, right?
Yeah.
So like all they have to do is call in, and once they call in, we're done. We got you from there, bro. As long as you have a camera plugged in, you know, we got you from there.
I love it, man. I think it's good. I love the hustle of it. Like, I love the fact that you're like, let's like take this on, like, because especially I think OBS Ninja has been a really great platform to use, but I think to your point, like it's not one that I would even be comfortable transitioning into like a paid gig, right? Because there's a lot of moving parts. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of buttons. Like
there's no visibility.
Whenever
you don't have
clients
stats.
Plus lots of buttons, that's the most terrifying combination of things in the world. Clients plus lots of buttons. Like that's disaster. That's calamity at that point.
Yep, that is calamity.
Okay, great. So you know, I know we could go on all day, but I think we'll probably end it a few minutes early today, just so that folks can hop over from here over to Derivative Stream. So first, and here, let me bring us back up to the side by side. First, my friend, thank you for joining us today. It's always an absolute pleasure talking to you, learning about kind of what you're doing. Working with you is always is like the best. It's so easy for me. It's crazy, especially like last year's championship, this year's championship. There's only a small handful of people who I work with, and it's like this is really easy for me. A lot of times I work with people, it's like why is this so hard? Why is my life so difficult?
So hard?
Yeah, why is this extra difficult for no reason? And I really appreciate you sharing kind of all of this, the background, the cool stories of what you've experienced, the virtual production workflows, what you're working with Hypersignal, like just having that openness with the community, I think is really amazing. And I'll thank you from myself and from the HQ and also from the viewers. There's a lot of folks. Let's see some hearts in the chat for Walker and kind of Azimuth Digital and what they're all working on. So one thing I would say is, where can people reach out to you at, and where can they learn more about you? Let me know, and I'll throw it in the chat.
Yeah, no, just my email address is probably the best way to contact me, which is just walker@azimuthdigitalmedia.com.
I'm gonna post that into the chat, folks, for y'all.
That's the best way to get a hold of me. I won't tout our website or anything like that. There's really nothing there to see. To be honest with you,
you're too busy doing them.
That's what I did. I cut back because when we first started, I had a lot of people hitting me up, and I hate telling people no, especially friends that you've done good projects with. And it was easier, and maybe I'm just a wuss, but it was easier for me to just hide a little bit than to sit there and tell everybody no. That problem is long gone, by the way. I'm not in demand like I was, so that's no longer a problem. But yeah.
So I just posted Walker's email in the chat, folks. If you want to have any question about the virtual production stuff, by all means, let us know. Let Walker know. If you are interested in Hypersignal and kind of what it brings to the table for... I hate the whole like Uber for X thing, but it's like OBS Ninja for pro projects, I think is a good way to think about it. By all means, hit up Walker. It's in private beta right now, and hopefully should be launching up pretty soon. Is there anything you kind of want to leave the viewers with, the last thoughts or sentiments?
No, I think as a TouchDesigner developer, if I would have told myself something earlier on, is just do it. Don't think about doing it. I know it's maybe cliche, but just do it, because people will see it, and people will. If you think it's cool, man, build it. That's the best advice I can give.
I think it's amazing advice, and there's so many cases where I think we imagine something worse happening from doing it.
Right.
When in most cases, there is very little downside to just doing it. Sorry, Nike, I'm just taking it, but like you just get to it.
Yeah.
Do the thing, see the opportunity, seize it, and I think that is a perfect segue to talk about the championship real quick, because opportunity. If you're inspired, opportunity awaits you right now. Imagine the space between my hands filling with a prize pool of thousands of dollars worth of licenses, chance to show off your skills and greatness to the world, chance to just have a fun community event. The championship is all of those things and more. So what I'm going to do is drop a link in the chat. Technically, I'm gonna like whisper this a little. Technically, applications close today, but for our special viewing audience, we're gonna let you know we're extending it just till Sunday night. So what that means is tonight, tomorrow, Sunday, get out your webcam. All you gotta do to apply is fill out a little form and just record a quick 1-minute video and say, I would like to be in the championship because of XYZ, and that's all we need. So there's no cost to apply, no application fees, totally free. I said that at the beginning, I wish I was a young man, because then I could compete, but it would be weird if the person hosting it and judging it is also competing. I don't think they allow that. So by all means, I'm putting a link in the chat. Up until Sunday, get your applications in. The event is happening August 21st and 22nd. Walker is a big part of the reason why we're even able to do that really great event, so I thank you for that as well, my friend. And then the final plug, I know it's the plug moment, come on guys, it's the plug second. The Interactive and Immersive HQ Pro, if you kind of like what you're seeing here and this really deep dive into the education behind the scenes of TouchDesigner, Notch, and Unreal, I highly recommend you check out the HQ Pro. It's the #1 most comprehensive resource if you're coming to the TouchDesigner side of things, and we're growing quickly with a lot of Notch content, Unreal content, and like I mentioned in the middle of the stream, we're dropping a really great workshop that is a 4-hour introduction to Blender for interactive artists, which is a really great thing because I'm not gonna lie, I am doo-doo at 3D. And you know, a lot of the time when we're planning courses, it's like, what skills do I wish I had when I was, you know, still in the heavy project phase of my career? What skills do I wish I had? And I think having a strong little 3D base under your tool belt or under your feet, incredibly useful, especially in this day and age with virtual production and things like that. So by all means, there's a 7-day free trial. Also, no commitment needed. You can quit at any time. Lots of good stuff in there. I'm in there. Matthew Reagan's one of our teachers. We got a lot of great teachers. We do have one quick question, and I'm going to answer this before we sign off here. Swirlbridge is asking, quick question, will the audience be able to hear audio from the competitors in this TD competition? We are working on it to make that a dream come true. Yes. And that's, I think that's it. So with that said, thank you everybody for watching. I'm going to put a link in the chat real quick here to Derivatives YouTube because they are just about to go live with In Session, and they have a great artist on, Noel Apita, and I really highly recommend everyone hop over there and watch that. So with that said, thank you everybody for watching. Walker, my friend, thank you for your time and generosity, not only to the community, the championship, and to everybody. And I look forward to seeing how Hypersignal comes out, and the championship's gonna be hype as hell. So
no, looking forward to it. It's gonna be
great. Yeah, we'll be talking on the weekend, so it's like not even I'll talk to you. It's like I'll talk to you pretty soon.
See you pretty soon. Yeah. No, thanks for having me. I appreciate people tuning in. It's been it was actually a lot of fun being able to talk about this stuff and go through it.
That's amazing. So thank you everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.